No one had seen or heard from Lauren Giddings for a few days, and her friends from law school quickly became worried because this was extremely uncharacteristic of Lauren, who was very outgoing and social. Lauren's studies were almost over, and she was actually preparing to take the bar exam. What people didn't pay much attention to, however, was Lauren's recent claim that she was being stalked. Things in her house would be moved to different places, and she thought someone had been breaking into her apartment. This, unfortunately, had been true, and Lauren would be murdered by this very same stalker. This video is intended for educational and documentary purposes. The content within this video contains themes that some individuals may consider triggering, offensive, or disturbing. The intent is not to disrespect viewers or any individual spoken about herein. Viewer discretion is advised. Lauren was actually the first member of her family to attend college. Her family was excited when she decided to go to law school. She had been so close to achieving her goal of becoming a lawyer. In fact, she received her law degree just a few weeks before her death. During the summer of 2011, she was cramming for her bar exam, which was the final step before she could finally become an attorney. She ironically intended to pursue a profession as a defense attorney. Lauren grew up in Howard County, Maryland, in a devout Catholic household. And she had a very generous spirit because she was brought up with the church teachings, which focused on and taught all about compassion and charity. And she would always showcase this when she was with her family and friends and even strangers, which some think may have been why she had such a passion for defense work and giving people in need a voice in criminal proceedings. Lauren adored animals. She actually grew up with dogs, rabbits, peacocks, goats, turkeys, chinchillas, and I love animals too. I have 8 pets in total in my house. Lauren was a country girl. She loved bluegrass music. She was the oldest of 3 daughters. Her 2 sisters are Sarah and Caitlin, and they lived on a dead-end type cul-de-sac off a gravel road. And Lauren was known to befriend pretty much anyone, which some believe may have contributed to her death. Lauren wasn't just nice and beautiful on the inside, she was also gorgeous on the outside. She had beautiful blonde hair, green blue eyes, and long legs. She was close to 6 feet tall. And of course, to top it off, she was intelligent and hardworking. And after high school, she moved away from her family in Maryland and was living in Georgia so that she could attend Agnes Scott College. This was a small college for women. At the time, she was actually studying to become a doctor, but she was having a really hard time with her chemistry classes, and she called home to her mom and broke the news that she no longer thought that the medical profession was for her. She changed her major to political science, and she interned at a very well-known law firm. It's called King and Spalding, and then she applied to law school. She was finally accepted to Mercer University Law School in Macon, Georgia. Lauren lived in this private apartment complex. It was right across from the law school campus, and it's called Barrister's Hall, which was specifically provided for law students. Lauren thought that this small, quaint, 2-story building that only had 8 apartments would be more private. There wouldn't be people necessarily partying really loud, and it would be great for studying and concentrating on school. At this point in life, it really seemed like Lauren had everything she was dreaming of. She even had a romantic relationship that blossomed while she was interning at King and Spalding with a man named David S. Van Diver III. He is an accomplished trial attorney that was 20 years older than Lauren. What was Lauren doing the last time anyone saw her? Well, Lauren's sister Caitlin had gotten married that summer in their home state of Maryland, and Lauren had attended the wedding before returning to her Barrister's Hall apartment in Macon to continue studying for the bar. And her family had absolutely no idea that this would, in fact, be the very last time they would see Lauren alive. She had already told her family and friends that she wouldn't be on her phone or social media in the weeks leading up to the bar exam because she wanted to disconnect from any distractions and really focus on her preparations. On a warm summer night, Friday, June 24th, Lauren met up with some friends. They met at a bar downtown where two of her classmates were performing in a band. So she went to a bar called the Rookery, and then she headed over to another bar called Bottoms Up before she went to a friend's house to spend the night since her boyfriend was out of town in California. The next day, Lauren went swimming at the Macon Country Club, and she headed back to her apartment around 6:30 p.m. She was caught on CCTV cameras entering a fast food drive-thru, and it was said that later on they did find receipts in her car that confirmed the time that she was there. But the only other evidence of Lauren's whereabouts that Saturday night was an email that she typed to her boyfriend at 10 p.m., and she had confided in him that she thought somebody had possibly broken into her apartment on Thursday night. And she was actually saying she was afraid to stay there. But since she was actually set to move out in just a few days, she didn't give it much thought. So where was Lauren? Lauren's friends and family had stopped hearing from Lauren by June 27th. Everyone assumed she was studying, just like she told everyone. But several days passed with no word from her. And on the 29th of June, her family was convinced that something happened to Lauren. And when you are close to someone, this has happened to me, tell me if it's happened to you, I'm sure it has, you do get this sick feeling in your stomach. Even if it turns out that nothing happened, I always have this pit in my stomach when someone doesn't answer, or they were supposed to meet me somewhere and they're not there and they're not answering. So I can only imagine, especially with what ends up happening. They weren't the only ones who hadn't heard from Lauren. In fact, nobody had any form of communication with Lauren for days, not even her boyfriend. So that's suspicious. Lauren's sister, Caitlin, was one of the first people to notice that something was definitely wrong. The silence from Lauren seemed really out of the ordinary, and one of her friends since childhood, named Katie O'Hare, texted Lauren with a question about makeup, and she thought it was out of character for Lauren to let a text go unanswered, even if it was a trivial thing, because they were so close. So Katie grew worried, and she also had that sick, bad feeling that something had happened. Katie had gotten so worried that she reached out to Caitlin to ask if Lauren had contacted her family, but no one had heard from her, and all the text had gone unanswered and calls went straight to Lauren's voicemail. So now I'm going to take you to Lauren's apartment. On the 30th of June, Lauren's friend Ashley Morehouse and Ashley's boyfriend decided to go check on Lauren's apartment. She later recalled asking her boyfriend to be prepared to face whatever horrifying situation they could possibly find in the apartment, which I found a little odd, but I think because I watch so much true crime, I would definitely feel that way. And then they ended up checking the apartment twice. The first time, they saw Lauren's car parked in its usual spot. They went up to her apartment and they knocked, but they got no answer. They thought that she could possibly gone out to do a few errands, so they came back to the apartment a little while later, but Lauren's car was still in the same spot. It hadn't been moved, and Lauren was still not responding to anyone. It was then that they remembered that Lauren kept a spare key hidden in a candle jar on her balcony, so they used it to check inside the apartment. Okay, I'm gonna stop like I've done in some other videos. Do you keep a key outside of your home? I'm not thinking of breaking in, but I wouldn't. But maybe that's because I'm paranoid. One of Lauren's neighbors from the apartment next door heard Ashley and her boyfriend, so he became aware of what was going on and he got really concerned. And he also helped them search for Lauren. So all three of the friends were distraught. They were completely confused about what was going on and what could have happened. Whatever the horror that they expected to find, it wasn't there. Everything seemed to be completely normal and in its place. The only odd thing that they found was Lauren's keys wallet, and purse were also still there. The keys stood out the most to them because if she had left by herself on her own accord, why would she leave the keys inside the apartment, knowing that she wouldn't be able to get back in without them? But then I was thinking, you just came in her house with a spare key. But still, it would be unusual if her car keys and her house keys were inside. This is when they called Lauren's sister Caitlin, who called the Macon County Police to file a missing persons report. Police arrived at the scene and they didn't find anything out of the ordinary. So they decided to do a luminol test. It's the one where you spray it. You can see remnants of blood if it's there. They weren't finding any blood within, the living room or the kitchen, but when they tested Lauren's bathroom, it just lit up. Everything was glowing in the bathtub, on certain portions of the tile. And they would later state that her bathtub had actually been full to the brim with blood. So investigators now believed that they were looking for Lauren's body. So sadly, they expanded their search to the surrounding buildings, and then police stumbled upon Lauren's body, or at this point, what was left of Lauren's body. It was found in an outdoor trash container that the tenants all shared, which was located in the front of the building, just below Lauren's balcony. They only found Lauren's torso, and it was wrapped in plastic, but everything else was missing. They knew it was Lauren because they matched the torso's DNA to hair found on one of her brushes. What's really creepy is they almost missed the opportunity to find Lauren because the dumpsters should have been emptied that morning, but they were blocked from getting to it because of all of the police cars. That's incredible. Police started to interview anyone that lived in the area or anyone that knew Lauren so that they could find out if anyone saw anything. This is when the neighbor who had been helping Ashley and her boyfriend search Lauren's apartment came forward because he was very concerned. His name is Stephen McDaniel, and he lived right next door to Lauren and also attended the same law school. Obviously, a lot of people in the community came forward to help and probably get more information because they were also scared about what was going on. He was standing outside of the building as these news crews came to report on Lauren's murder. This was the first time that he found out police may have found Lauren's torso. So I'm going to play that interview for you.
No one's heard from her since.
Did you see her hang out with anyone at the time, anything like that?
I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything. I mean, I've always heard noise outside, but it's just people walking by pretty much.
And she just recently graduated from Mercer?
Yeah, she and I we were both JD students. We graduated back in May.
What kind of person was she? I mean, what did you see?
I mean, she's as nice as can be. I mean, very personable, very much a people person.
Do you know any enemies she might have had, somebody that might want to hurt her?
No, we don't know where she is. I mean, the only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her. Because we went over. One of her friends had a key. We went inside and tried to see if there was anything amiss, but she had a door jamb that was sitting right by it, so there was no sign that anyone broke in. The door was locked when everyone got here. We just don't know where she is.
What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of. I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body.
Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? Like, they took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. So that's how we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir?
I think I need to sit down.
Okay.
So you heard the interview, and when investigators reviewed it, they described his behavior as being unhinged. Okay, to me personally, it didn't really seem that unusual because everybody reacts differently to hearing news that someone they knew or they cared about or both may have just been found dead. But police were still suspicious When he collapsed on the sidewalk, that's not that unusual, but then he got up and continued to go through with the interview. So I want to play the rest of it. I am going to take some of the information out because it's not as relevant, but let's take a listen.
No one had seen her since Saturday because we all just, there's not a whole lot of interaction unless we're doing classes. So I hardly ever saw her. I mean, I would see her like go out running, but I mean...
What time would she go out running?
I don't even know when.
At night or morning?
I saw her like midday a couple weeks ago. I mean, that was the last time I saw her. She ran all the time. I mean, she had a group that she would go running with. I mean, I don't know anyone that would want to hurt her. She was as nice a person as there is.
As you just heard, he said it was possible that someone snatched Lauren while she was on a run. And from the interview, it was clear Stephen seemed to know way too much about Lauren's schedule just to be an acquaintance and a classmate or even somebody that lived next door. Because he had been claiming to police that they weren't really close, but that he just knew her from living next door.
Was she moving soon? Did you know anything about her?
Yeah, she was going to be moving out today. Joe, he got onto her computer last night to see if she had sent anything. She'd sent an email out to some people that afternoon talking about like going out to eat or something. And the last thing that there was an email that she sent out after 10 that night where she sent to, I think it was someone in Atlanta, a friend of hers in Atlanta, and she said that she was afraid in her apartment that she thought someone had tried to break in on Thursday night, and she was afraid to stay in there.
At this point, I think maybe Stephen should have used his law school knowledge and just completely remained silent. I think that's what Lauren would have told him to do, considering she wanted to focus on being a defense attorney. Remain silent, plead the fifth, zip it. A lot of times, murderers completely incriminate themselves by not knowing how to shut up. But of course, I'm really glad he did speak up because he was voluntarily inserting himself into the situation, which did make him come off very suspicious, especially when he told reporters that he wished he could have done something for Lauren, like offer one of his firearms so that she could protect herself.
Yeah, I just heard something. Maybe I could have helped.
Okay, don't worry. Do you want to sit down for a second? Get something to drink?
I could have lent her a handgun. I've got a little handgun that I have for defense.
And this is when he became a person of interest, and the investigators turned their attention to him. They interviewed some of Stephen's friends, and his friends described him as strange. They said that he had a zombie fetish, not really sure what that means, and he would often ask people how they would carry out the perfect murder. And at this point, the police asked him to come in for an interview at the police station, and he ended up becoming the prime suspect in Lauren's murder.
About this girl right here, you know her?
Yes,
Who is that?
Lauren Giddings.
Does she live next door to you?
Yes,
When's the last time you seen her?
2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Was you friends with Lauren?
Yes,
Look at me when you talk to me, son. Okay? Was you friends with her?
yes,
Close friends?
we were good.
I mean, y'all were friends, right? Both of
Yes.
y'all are law students. You're studying to be an attorney, right?
Yes.
What kind of law do you want to go into? Criminal law?
Yes,
Civil? Is that what you want to do for a living?
yes,
Okay. Are you almost finished?
yes,
Okay. So you don't have too much more to do, right?
no,
All right.
The investigators decided to bait him. They told him that he hadn't cleared out all of the blood in his apartment and that they were able to recover some of it. He didn't respond to this either.
There's blood in your apartment, Stephen. That's right. There's blood in your apartment. Stephen, this is hard, buddy. I know this is hard. And I can tell it's on you. You want to let it go. There's blood in your apartment, Stephen. You didn't get it all up. It didn't all come off. You scrubbed and you wiped. But we can tell that. Don't you watch CSI? Yeah, we know it. Stephen, why is there blood in your bathroom?
I don't know.
Yes, you do know. Why, Stephen?
I don't know.
Has anybody else been in your bathroom?
The police were in there.
Other than the police? Who else has been in there?
No one that I
No
know.
one. And you recently cleaned your bathroom, didn't you?
No,
How long ago?
I don't remember.
A couple days ago?
No,
Over the weekend?
no,
No, you don't know.
I don't remember.
They saw a couple scratch marks that he had, and he told them that he scratched himself in his sleep. I don't think I've ever done that, so I found that to be very odd.
Show me that scratch again that you showed me earlier. That was it a... What did you say happened there?
I think I scratched myself in my sleep.
Huh.
But something that ended up making police connect him to the crime later was a statement he made about being a virgin. He said that he was saving himself and he was celibate. I don't know.
About how you like to look at porn on the internet. You expressed to me that you're a virgin, correct?
Yes.
They decided at this point they needed to search his apartment. Investigators ended up finding a collection of guns, knives, and oddly, he also had a huge collection of, wait for it, toilet paper rolls. He had a bunch of canned food, like he was expecting the world to end, so maybe this was part of his zombie fetish. Another interesting thing you might want to look at after this video, and I'll leave it in the description box, are the collected writings of Stephen. Most of them are copies of emails that he sent around to his law school campus to different people. One of them in particular was sent at the height of the 2008 presidential election. It was on the morning of October 15th, 2008. And this was when the third presidential debate between John McCain and Barack Obama was going on. I'm going to skim over this and you can take a look later if this interests you, but as you can see, he's addressing this to the Mercer Law student body with the subject line, political, hypothetical. Tell me what you think about this. Is this something that people normally do? And you'll notice he ended the email by saying, Stephen McDaniel, a true-born son of liberty. One that I thought was funny because it is actually a pet peeve of mine. Maybe we'll learn something. Maybe Stephen's right, but someone sent him an email and they were letting Stephen know that irregardless is not a word, saying it's logically absurd to combine the negative elements of ir and less within the same word. Unsubscribe me. Surprisingly, Stephen wrote back, saying irregardless is a word, while it's considered to be a non-standard expression of the conceptual terms synonymous with it, such as regardless and irrespective. It is recognized as a legitimate term. Funny enough, I did look up the word irregardless because it is a pet peeve of mine, and surprisingly, I guess it's in the dictionary. He also said he was working on a fantasy novel that he claimed would rival Lord of the Rings. They also stumbled upon what looked like a homemade mask, and it was made out of a pair of panties.
What's up with the pair of underwear that was in your apartment? That was like a
know.
mask. It was cut out like a mask. You cut underwear out to look like a mask?
No.
But remember when I told you that he told the police he was a virgin and then they would connect him later to the crime? They found a huge collection of unopened condoms in his bedroom. And they asked him, why would you need condoms if you were a virgin? And this is when he actually admitted that he had stolen them from one of the other apartments in the building. And at this point, there was definitely enough evidence to make an arrest. During a police interrogation, Stephen just stared directly at investigators in this really eerie manner. He almost looked as though he was pretending he was psycho. I mean, after you hear all this, maybe you'll think he is. But he acted like he had maybe a psychotic break, or he was delusional. Maybe he was trying to end up being able to use insanity as a defense. But his eyes appeared to just be glazed over, and he would stare at the wall. He wouldn't look the detectives in the eyes. And at one point, the detective even asked him if he was counting the pores in the cement wall.
You came down earlier tonight, me and you talked, all right. You don't have any weapons on you, do you?
No.
That's just you are. What's wrong? You know I'm Detective Patterson, right?
Yes.
You remember, put your hands up here. You remember us talking earlier tonight, right?
Yes.
You remember me earlier in the day?
Yes.
We came down here and talked a little bit and then we left.
No matter what they asked him, Stephen's reply was, I don't know.
What happened, Stephen?
I don't know.
Another thing I noticed about this case was that a lot of memes were made regarding the way that Stephen reacted to all the questions. They're pretty self-explanatory, as you can see, asking Stephen anything. A lot of the memes focused on the investigators, especially this one who kept leaning back in his chair. So a lot of memes were created with him doing Twister. This one, I'm not the best at understanding memes, but I guess these are self-explanatory to people that know their memes. And this one is him looking like he's doing sit-ups. He blamed this lack of empathy and the lack of cooperation on his lawyerly instincts. And he said that he was very protective of his space. But, of course, he disrespected other people's space, going into their homes and stealing condoms. And we'll soon find out other things. In addition to the other suspicious items in his possession, police found a master key and a key to Lauren's door, so he could open any of the doors in the apartment complex. They also found a flash drive belonging to Lauren, which included hundreds of personal photos. The search history on his computer revealed that he was looking at Lauren's Facebook and her LinkedIn accounts, and sometimes he would be looking at photos of her while watching violent pornography. They were able to link that from the times he was on certain sites. And then they found Lauren's underwear in his apartment. Stephen tried to be slick and delete some evidence off of his computer, but of course forensics were able to pull it up and they discovered deleted footage of Lauren. Stephen had actually obtained this footage while he was stalking her on the night of her murder. He had actually built somewhat of a selfie stick, if you will. He had taken a wooden pole and he duct taped a camera to the end of it, and then he raised the pole up to her window so that he was able to record her inside. They eventually found a hacksaw that wasn't supposed to be in there in a utility area of the building, which they then suspected was used to dismember Lauren's body. Upon further investigation, they found the packaging that the hacksaw came in when the person bought it. And the person had to be Stephen because the packaging was found in his apartment. And then they confirmed that Lauren's blood was on it. And even after being confronted with all of this evidence, he still maintained his innocence. And they just kept pressuring him until he finally broke. At that point, he admitted to what he did, and he took a plea deal, and he told police everything that happened that night. Here's the truth about what happened to Lauren Giddings. Stephen had gone to her apartment while she was sleeping, and she woke up to see him standing over her bed. He actually said that she was calm, but she told him to get the fuck out of her apartment. I would be way more creeped out, and maybe he's lying about that. Maybe she got right up and screamed because, again, she was afraid to be staying in that apartment because she thought someone had broken in just a few days earlier. But remember, this is his version of what happened. He says he then attacked her before strangling her to death. We won't know because we don't have her whole body. He didn't know what else to do with her at this point, so he left her in the bathtub of her own apartment and then returned the next day to dismember her. He placed her body parts in different garbage bags and then deposited these garbage bags into various trash cans all around the law school campus. However, he decided to put one of the bags into that dumpster in front of his own apartment, which just strikes me as completely odd considering you have a law school education. You want to be a criminal defense attorney, yet you're going to leave evidence right in front of your own house. Doesn't make sense to me. This is the portion of Lauren's remains that police were able to recover. Unfortunately, the rest of her remains had already been taken to landfills by the time Stephen had confessed, so it wasn't possible to recover them. There was this one news article that I read, and it was so sad. They interviewed her dad, and he had come to the police department because he thought that he was going to be identifying Lauren's body because they had told him that they found a body that they believed to be his daughter's. But they were stalling, or what seemed like taking too long for him to go identify her. And so he's wondering, why are they not leading me to her body to identify it? And one of the detectives just couldn't bring himself to tell this father what had happened. It was just so unbelievable that they were actually holding back. But at some point, they had to be the bearer of bad news and let her father know that he wouldn't actually be able to see his daughter, see her face, or to hold her, but that all they had was this one portion. I, especially as a parent, don't even like to think about these things. These are the things that do keep me up at night. One question that everyone kept asking themselves was why? What was the motive? Why did Stephen do this to a friend, to a person that he admitted was sweet and nice and a good person? Stephen said he never intended to kill Lauren, that he got scared and he panicked, and that all he wanted to do was get closer to Lauren because he liked her and he thought that she was really pretty. He said that all he really wanted to do was go in her apartment and watch her sleep. And he actually tried to make this look like it was innocent and normal. It's not. Investigators believe that the murder was premeditated and that Stephen had become obsessed with Lauren during the time she lived next door to him. Lauren was planning to move out of the apartment complex just days after she was killed because she was moving in with her boyfriend. They think that his obsession reached the point of no return because she was leaving. And instead of just letting her move on with her life, Stephen chose to end it. As part of Stephen's plea deal, he wrote what is called an allocution. According to the American Bar Association, after pleading guilty, a defendant is typically offered a formal opportunity to address the court to express remorse and explain personal circumstances that might be considered in sentencing. The allocution statement provides an opportunity for defendants to accept responsibility, humanize themselves, and to mitigate their sentences to ensure that their punishment is appropriate for both the crime and the person who committed it. A lot of times a family will allow the death sentence to be taken off the table so that they can hear the confession as part of the plea deal. And that's exactly what happened in Lauren's case. Of course, Lauren was against the death penalty, and that's one of the reasons why it was taken off the table. But Lauren's mother actually made a deal with the DA that if he confessed and told the unknown details about the killing, that they would take the death penalty off the table and he would serve life in prison. We'll never know if what Stephen confessed to was true, but I do want to read you his statement. On Sunday, June 26, 2011, around 4:30 a.m., I entered Lauren Giddings' apartment with a master key that I possessed. I was wearing gloves and a mask. I walked to her bedroom door and stood there, observing her sleeping. As I took another step, the floor creaked, and she awoke. She sat up in bed, saw me, and said very calmly, "Get the fuck out." I leaped across the bed onto her and grabbed her around the throat. We tumbled out of the bed and onto the floor, and in her struggle to get away, she moved her legs and lower body under her bed, preventing her from getting away or kicking me. I kept my hands around her throat as we fell to the floor. She reached up and was able to grab the mask and pull it over my head. She said, "Stephen, please stop." I continued to strangle her until she stopped moving, and I remained that way with my hands around her throat for several minutes, possibly as long as 15 minutes. She did not move anymore. I dragged her into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub, then returned to my apartment. I remained in my apartment mostly on my computer throughout the day, Sunday, June 26th. I returned to Lauren's apartment around midnight Sunday to begin to dismember her with the hacksaw that was later recovered from the laundry room maintenance closet. I removed her limbs and head, wrapped them in several black trash bags separately, and discarded them in the Mercer Law School dumpster across the street from Barrister Hall Apartments. I cut up the mask, gloves, and my shirt and flushed them down my toilet. I wrapped her torso in black plastic trash bags and placed it in the green Barrister's Hall trash can on Tuesday, June 28th, before daylight. I then cleaned up her bathroom. I never used the refrigerator in apartment 1. At no time before Lauren's death did I sexually accost her. At no point after her death did I perform any sexual act of any kind with respect to her remains. She was wearing the pink running shorts when she died, and I never removed them. They were found on her torso just as I had left them. On Monday, I stayed home from bar prep class. Over the next several days, I rarely slept, used my computer extensively, yet still attended bar prep class on Tuesday and Wednesday. I joined the search party Wednesday night into the early hours of Thursday morning, June 30th. Still in a dreamlike delusional state, in which I believed at the time while taking part in the search that Lauren was still alive, and that I had not done what I had done, even searching the empty law school in a delusional hope of finding Lauren alive and well, as if I had not really killed her. During the weeks leading up to my actions and the days following, as I look back on it now, I can only describe myself as divided in mind, unable to account for how I could have committed these horrible acts and at the same time also be able to carry on daily routines. It is difficult for me to explain why I killed Lauren and attempted to conceal my deed the way that I did. The difficulty in explaining it lies in my own inability to understand it myself. I know that it was very wrong. I am not delusional or without any morals or decency. Yet, I acknowledge that something in my makeup, my psychology, my neuropathology, my own particular pathology perhaps, must explain it, but it is beyond my reach. Lauren was my friend. Not a day goes by that I do not grieve over her death. I am extremely sorry for what I did to Lauren and her family. I do not expect the forgiveness of Lauren's family, and there is no way I can ever deserve it. No words are sufficient to take away their pain. If only I could take back what happened, I would do so. If I could restore Lauren to her family, I would. All I can say to Lauren's family and her many friends is, I am very sorry. Signed, Stephen McDaniel, April 21st, 2014. However, just 4 years later, McDaniel's dad helped him file a writ of habeas corpus. This is a fundamental right in the Constitution that protects against unlawful and indefinite imprisonment. Translated from Latin, it means, show me the body. Habeas corpus is very important to safeguard individual freedom against arbitrary executive power. This was a 73-page document that argued that his constitutional rights were violated throughout the investigation and pretrial process. The 4 grounds that McDaniel cited are: 1, he claims that he was in a catatonic state and that a proper warrant wasn't filed to search his apartment. Number 2, McDaniel said the state gained insight into his defense strategy and used it against him through intercepted records of his legal research while imprisoned. Number 3, he says that the judge was prejudiced against him. And number 4, McDaniels claims that he had ineffective assistance from his lawyers. Stephen's father decided to do a press conference about the habeas corpus, and this is an exchange between him and one of the reporters.
Just right out the gate, is your son saying that he's innocent today?
What we're saying, we're not saying this, a habeas corpus has nothing to do with innocence. What we're saying is this concerns the state's misconduct, making it impossible to receive a fair trial. That's all we're saying.
But can I ask you, has your son told you that he's innocent?
I'm not going to go into that.
How are you, as a father, how are you handling this?
Well, of course, I'm very concerned about what's been going on and what Stephen's gone through. And we feel bad about what's going on, but we see some hope in the future. And we're hoping that the truth will come out. That's all we're hoping.
But your son confessed to doing this. Do you think it's fair to put the Giddings family through a new trial?
Well, this has nothing to do with them. This has to do with the misconduct of the state.
As part of the plea agreement, Stephen gave a pretty detailed account of what happened that night and how he killed Lauren. So is he saying that that is not true, that that's not what happened?
Well, I think that hopefully he'll get, if he gets a new trial, that will be addressed.
I don't know about you, but I found it to be completely insensitive that Stephen's dad would make a comment that this has nothing to do with Lauren's family. This has everything to do with Lauren's family. McDaniel then appeared before a judge in February 2018, pro se, which means he's representing himself. Although he had planned to question more than a dozen witnesses, according to court documents, only 3 out of the 5 people subpoenaed actually showed up. When McDaniel questioned his former defense attorney, Floyd Buford, this is when things took a real turn. Apparently, his attorneys thought he was innocent until they heard him confess in detail about what he did to Lauren.
Until the last couple of weeks of your case, I was strongly in your corner, believing you were innocent. But this computer evidence that came in from the GBI, the fact that you peeping in this Giddings apartment, the graphic, specific, detailed confession that you made to Frank Hogan and I, which we were shocked about in the jail, and which you went into terrific detail about how you killed Lauren Giddings, how you went about decapitating her, carving of her body, how you even sat down and cut off every finger and thumb and appendage on her hands and threw them all in the toilet and flushed it at one time. And then combine that with the searches on the internet, the fact that you had done searches about having sex with dead people, things of that nature. All of that combined to a heavy, heavy evidentiary problem in your case. On top of that, you possess the most horrific child pornographic photos I've ever seen. And I've been practicing law for 33 years. And we worked out a deal with the United States Attorney's Office where if you entered a plea in front of Judge Sims, that they were not going to prosecute you on child pornography. Started off facing a death penalty. It ended up with life with possibility of parole. You could get out one day, Stephen, and viciously murder a woman and dismember her, and you still could be paroled. So I don't see how that's ineffective assistance. We were working on the allocution before that, which I thought was a very good idea to get all the details down. And we had put it in there just like you had said, including cutting off all 10 of her fingers. And you read the allocution, you suggested some minor changes, but then you said you wanted it deleted about cutting those 10 fingers off. So that was not in your allocution.
The judge denied his appeal, and he continues to serve time in the Hancock State Prison, serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole. What are your thoughts? So in the end, Lauren actually saved Stephen in a way because of what a good person she was. It turned out that Lauren was one of the only people who actually bothered to talk to Stephen and treat him respectfully. And for this kindness, Stephen repaid her by taking her life. I want to take a moment to say thank you for coming to watch my videos, subscribing to my channel, and I appreciate all the suggestions, and I will try my best to bring you original stories. I know this one is more of a popular, well-known case, but it did interest me since I went to law school, and I tend to gravitate towards cases that really strike a chord with me. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the notification bell because I don't have a set schedule. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.